Welcome back to the update. I am Tiffany.
I'm Daniel.
And I'm Jai. Thank you guys for holding on, for coming back, and we hope you've had an amazing weekend. This election week, that's pretty much what we've been up to. So we hope you got your bootstraps tied tight. We've got a ton of facts and info to give you today, especially with elections coming up tomorrow. This is the update.
All right, welcome friends. It is the beginning of the week and we hope you're ready because lots of changes will come this week. So instead of our normal Haps with the Maps or any other segments, we are going to dedicate today's show to election coverage. That's right, students, ladies and gentlemen, we are your 2022 election news leaders. The best part about our coverage, it's not based on opinions, it's just the facts as it should be. Now you might have been catching all the info on our prior shows, and don't forget, you can still catch those on our demand. So today we want to break down again who is running, what their beliefs are, which are strictly according to their websites, meaning it's from the source so that you can make the best decision according to your own beliefs. We're going to cover 5 points of interest, including the border, abortion, election integrity, inflation, and the economy. And we will let you know how each candidate feels on each topic. We'll also go over each office being run for and what their responsibilities are. Because remember, who we vote for will directly affect how an office is run, and that goes for the national and state level. Now with all of that being said, let's start off with the office for senator. Our Arizona candidates are Blake Masters and Mark Kelly. Mark Victor was in the race, however, he has gracefully stepped back and has endorsed Blake Masters. So what exactly does a senator do? First and foremost, a U.S. senator's main job is to represent the citizens of their state. The primary responsibility is assuring they have the state's best interests in mind when drafting legislation and voting on bills. A senator also attempts to secure funding for different state projects and creates and passes rules and regulations to the benefit of the state which they represent. And while their state is their number one priority, a senator also has an obligation to the entire country and must balance the state's interests with those of U.S. citizens. Other job and duties include voting on bills, sitting on committees, and giving advice and consent to presidents on nominations and treaties. So they have a huge job because it affects the nation's legislation as well, so you want to make sure you vote for someone whose beliefs align with yours, as with all of the positions. So back to the candidates, get to the topics. Jai's got where the candidates stand. Jai?
Thank you, Tiff. Now guys, first, we're going to get their view on the border immigration issue. Huge hot button topic, especially here in Arizona this time, and how each candidate will handle it. So first off, let's start with Blake Masters. Now, Blake Masters represents the Republican Party. His website states, and quote, "As your senator, I will fight tirelessly to end illegal immigration and secure our border. We're going to finish the wall, triple the size of the Border Patrol, increase high-tech surveillance at the border, mandate E-Verify nationwide, hire lots more USCIS agents and magistrate judges to process deportations, and always oppose amnesty for illegal aliens, period." End quote. Now, according to our other candidate, Mark Kelly, who represents the Democratic Party, according to his site regarding border security, quote, "Mark has delivered increased technology and staffing to strengthen Arizona border security. Thanks to Mark, Customs and Border Protection will be closing border barrier gaps near the Morelos Dam outside of Yuma. Mark will keep working to ensure that Arizona has the tools needed for a secure, orderly, and fair process at the border." End quote. Now moving on to our next topic, but very related here, abortion rights. Massive, massive topic here with these elections, and it should be. We're talking about autonomy over a woman's body, right? Well, depends on your political opinions. But quote, In the U.S. Senate, I will support the Hyde Amendment, ensuring that no taxpayer funds ever fund abortions, strict taxpayer funding from Planned Parenthood, support a law or a constitutional amendment that bans late term, meaning third trimester abortions, and partial birth abortions at the federal level, and support pro-life legislation, pregnancy centers, and programs that make it easier for pregnant women to support a family and decide to choose life. The right to life is guaranteed by our founding documents, and we'll fight to defend it. Meanwhile, according to Kelly's website, quote, Mark will always defend and protect the right of Arizona women to make their own healthcare decisions. So that is completely up to you, however you feel on that huge hot button topic that has implications going back to religious beliefs in the beginning of time. Now next up is election security. Now according to Blake Masters' website, there will be, quote, nationwide voter ID. To vote in a federal election, he says you should have to show a state or federal issued photo ID, period. This would ban, also he wants to ban private funding of election administration. Now, he says he will investigate how Mark Zuckerberg's $420 million was spent on, quote, administering the 2020 election. Anyone who directed that those funds be used for partisan purposes will be prosecuted and imprisoned. This is all part of his mission, as stated on the website. He also says he'd like to stop the Democrats' crazy voting rights bills. Every American adult already has the right to vote, so he says when the left pushes new voting rights laws, really they just want to make it easier to cheat. That's his opinion. He says he wants to eliminate bizarre loopholes. In Arizona in 2020, he says over 11,600 people voted for president without ever proving that they were a U.S. citizen, end quote. So, go ahead and hashtag us if you think that this issue, however you guys feel on it, we love to hear. And what about Kelly? Well, his site doesn't talk about election security, at least not that we found. Now, Mark, if you've got something for us, please send us an email at hyfntv@gmail.com. That's hyfntv@gmail.com. We want to make sure that we're fair to all our candidates and simply just get their opinions, their facts, what they are holding as their big rocks in what they believe will make them of the most usefulness to the constituents. We want to deliver all that to you, so please do reach out. Now, Daniel's got our next story next with their views on the next two topics. Daniel?
Thank you, Jai. Now, especially when it comes to senators, these next categories are very important. First up is inflation. According to Masters, and I quote, as your senator, I will restore economic sanity to the Senate by reining in government spending, fighting the bureaucrats and over-regulations responsible for driving prices up, exercising meaningful oversight over the Federal Reserve. An audit, anyone? And restoring American energy independence. When energy is cheap, everything else gets cheaper too. End quote. You can compare that to Mark Kelly, who says, since last November, Mark has called on the Biden administration to take action to lower costs. His plans to lower prescription drug costs was recently signed into law. He's also introduced legislation to temporarily suspend the federal gas tax, supported increased domestic oil production, and has rushed corporations to stop price gouging. End quote. And moving on to the final topic, the economy. Where do they each stand? Well, according to Blake Masters, to make our economy strong again, let's get back to the basics. As your senator, I will promote American industry. We need high-paying, high-tech manufacturing jobs that bolster our national security. Demand a security review of our supply chain and support the development of U.S. manufacturing in areas with critical gaps. Fight for better, smarter trade deals. And as President Trump taught us, there's no such thing as free trade with China. Our trade policies must prioritize American workers, not the Chinese Communist Party and country of origin labor. Force big tech giants like Google and Amazon to disclose where the products they sell were made. End quote. Now, Mark Kelly, on his site, it says, and I quote, "Mark has helped cut taxes for families, all while making sure corporations pay for their fair share. He delivered direct support to Arizona families and small businesses as well. Since taking office, he's also returned over $17 million in owed benefits back to the constituents and has used his office to help support local small businesses like Tres Leches Cafe in Phoenix. For creating jobs through the bipartisan infrastructure law and his microchip manufacturing law, Mark is bringing thousands of good-paying jobs to the state of Arizona, many of which don't require a 4-year degree. By supporting community colleges and technical schools around the state, he's making sure Arizonans have all the tools they need to fill the jobs." End quote. So, from that information and your knowledge, because you've done your own research too, right? You can make the best decision for you. Get out there and vote. Back to you, Tiff.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, you guessed it, we've got more offices to cover. We'll be right back.
Are your sports and events currently being streamed by a quality network hosted in one place? Are your games, concerts, plays, recitals, special events, are they being hosted on the #1 streaming network in Arizona? They can. HYFN TV is free to the viewer with the ability to raise money for your club or your school via your stream. HYFN TV has individual streaming packages built with the ability for booster clubs to sell advertising on their streams to raise money for their program. Stream on the HYFN TV network. Go to hyfntv.com to find out how you can start streaming and raising money for your organization. Check us out on hyfntv.com.
Your social media highlights can make the news. When you post your highlights from your favorite high school player, when your team's out there doing their thing, hashtag HYFNTV, and your highlight may be used on the next newscast. You get the photo cred right here on the morning news where everyone can follow you too. So every time you post a highlight on social media, remember to hashtag your highlights, HYFNTV, and get your media on the news.
Country music fans, you don't want to miss the live country lineup coming in town this Veterans Day weekend. Ashley Wineland, Bobby Joe Bell,
3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Slide to your left, tip down your hat, drop it down. Raise some hands for ASD. Put your feet
Hillbilly
down on the
Deluxe.
ground. It's time to rock it this way. Come on.
Wake at Midnight, and special guest band opening the show, Christopher Shane.
We all flash in the skies. Open, let 'em breathe.
This festival will be supporting the Foundation Raise Your Hands, Inc. and Arizona Department of Veterans Services. Saturday, November 12th, Veterans Day weekend at Riverview Park in Mesa. Music, large wood dance floor, Arizona's best food trucks, unique shopping, and every kind of drink in a can. Your first drink is on us with the purchase of a ticket, and 2 drinks if you're a veteran. Leave the kids at home. This is a 21 and over event. Get your tickets now on sale, or they'll be $30 at the door. You can get your tickets at limelightentertainment.com. Are your sports and events currently being streamed by a quality network hosted in one place? Are your games, concerts, plays, recitals, special events, are they being hosted on the #1 streaming network in Arizona? They can. HYFN TV is free to the viewer with the ability to raise money for your club or your school via your stream. HYFN TV has individual streaming packages built with the ability for booster clubs to sell advertising on their streams to raise money for their program. Stream on the HYFN TV network. Go to hyfntv.com to find out how you can start streaming and raising money for your organization. Check us out on hyfntv.com.
Your social media highlights can make the news. When you post your highlights from your favorite high school player, when your team's out there doing their thing, Hashtag HYFNTV, and your highlight may be used on the next newscast. You get the photo cred right here on the morning news where everyone can follow you too. So every time you post a highlight on social media, remember to hashtag your highlights, HYFNTV, and get your media on the news.
Country music fans, you don't want to miss the live country lineup coming in town this Veterans Day weekend. Ashley Wineland, Bobby Joe Bell,
3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Slide to your left, tip down your hat, drop it down. Raise some hands for ASD. Put your feet
Hillbilly
down on the
Deluxe,
ground. It's time to rock it this way. Come on.
Wake at Midnight, and special guest band opening the show, Christopher Shane.
We are flashing scars, open, let 'em breathe.
This festival will be supporting the Foundation Raise Your Hands, Inc. and Arizona Department of Veterans Services. Saturday, November 12th, Veterans Day weekend at Riverview Park in Mesa. Music, large wood dance floor, Arizona's best food trucks, unique shopping, and every kind of drink in a can. Your first drink is on us with the purchase of a ticket, and 2 drinks if you're a veteran. Leave the kids at home. This is a 21 and over event. Get your tickets now on sale, or they'll be $30 at the door. You can get your tickets at Limelight Entertainment.
Your social media highlights can make the news. When you post your highlights from your favorite high school player, when your team's out there doing their thing. Hashtag HYFNTV, and your highlight may be used on the next newscast. You get the photo cred right here on the morning news where everyone can follow you too. So every time you post a highlight on social media, remember to hashtag your highlights, HYFNTV, and get your media on the news.
Are your sports and events currently being streamed by a quality network hosted in one place? Are your games, concerts, plays, recitals, special events, are they being hosted on the #1 streaming network in Arizona? They can. HYFN TV is free to the viewer with the ability to raise money for your club or your school via your stream. HYFN TV has individual streaming packages built with the ability for booster clubs to sell advertising on their streams to raise money for their program. Stream on the HYFN TV network. Go to hyfntv.com to find out how you can start streaming and raising money for your organization. Check us out on hyfntv.com. Country music fans, you don't want to miss the live country lineup coming in town this Veterans Day weekend. Ashley Wineland, Bobby Joe Bell,
3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Slide to your left, tip down your hat, drop it down. Raise some hands for ASD. Put your feet
Hillbilly
down on the
Deluxe,
ground. It's time to rock it this way. Come on.
Wake at Midnight, and special guest band opening the show, Christopher Shane.
We are flashing scars, open, let 'em breathe.
This festival will be supporting the Foundation Raise Your Hands, Inc. and Arizona Department of Veterans Services. Saturday, November 12th, Veterans Day weekend at Riverview Park in Mesa. Music, large wood dance floor, Arizona's best food trucks, unique shopping, and every kind of drink in a can. Your first drink is on us with the purchase of a ticket, and 2 drinks if you're a veteran. Leave the kids at home. This is a 21 and over event. Get your tickets now on sale, or they'll be $30.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us today. Look, we get this probably isn't the most exciting information you've heard. However, if you truly learn to listen, you will gain some insight, and well, hopefully it'll spark a little curiosity in you, and you'll do your own research. Anyhow, let's get back to it. Next up, we are talking about the Office of the Attorney General. Now, this office serves as the chief legal officer of the state, is mandated by our Constitution, and elected to a 4-year term by the people of Arizona, which you're doing tomorrow. The Attorney General's office represents and provides legal advice to most state agencies, enforces consumer protection and civil rights laws, and prosecutes criminals charged with complex financial crimes and certain conspiracies involving illegal drugs. In addition, all appeals statewide from felony convictions are handled by this office as well. The Arizona Attorney General's office, also through the Child and Family Protection Division, provides legal services to all the divisions of DES, including the Division of Child Support Services. It also provides legal services to the Department of Child Safety, and if that wasn't enough, the Attorney General's office brings and defends lawsuits on behalf of the state and prepares formal legal opinions requested by state officers, legislators, or county attorneys on issues of law. The office also has jurisdiction over Arizona Consumer Fraud Act, white-collar crime, organized crime, public corruption, environmental laws, civil rights laws, and crimes committed in more than one county. Additionally, this office prosecutes cases normally handled by county attorneys when they have a conflict. And did you know the Attorney General's office is the largest law office in the state? The office is divided into criminal, state government, child and family protection, civil litigation, Solicitor General's office, and finally operations. So let's take a look at the candidates. Jai has the info for you.
Thank you, Tiff. So, yeah, guys, the candidates for the office are Republican Abraham Hamadeh and Democrat Chris Mays. Now, first, when it comes to border issues, Abe Hamadeh's site indicates, quote, border security is national security. Our borders are not protected, and they're not secure. As Attorney General, I will enforce state laws since the federal government refuses to take action. I will create a task force unit within our law enforcement agency to target border crimes. Drug cartels are invading our southern border and even our neighborhoods. We must classify them as terrorists and put our communities and protect our communities. As Attorney General, I will defend our border by enforcing state laws and protecting private property. And Chris Mays' website states, quote, border security is a federal responsibility, and as Attorney General, I will not allow the federal government to neglect that responsibility. I will coordinate with state, local, and national law enforcement to go after the cartels who engage in drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, and human trafficking. We have a fentanyl crisis that is out of control, destroying families and killing people. These are very serious problems that demand serious actions, not an endless succession of press conferences at the border with all bark and no bite. Our border can only be secured through a combined team effort with county sheriffs, local police departments, state agencies like the Department of Public Safety, and federal agencies like the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice, end quote. Now moving on to abortion, here's what they have to say. Hamadeh's website states, quote, the most fundamental right enshrined in the Constitution is the right to life. As Attorney General, I will protect the most vulnerable among us and work to promote a culture of life in Arizona. I will fight to protect the rights of our children at all stages, beginning at conception, and ensure that our laws to protect life are fully implemented. Meanwhile, May's website indicates, quote, as Attorney General, I will not prosecute doctors, PAs, nurses, midwives, doulas, or pharmacists for providing our women for receiving reproductive services. This includes abortions, providing care to women who require DNCs, women who have miscarriages, IVF services, and women seeking Plan B and or any form of birth control. I believe abortions should be legal and safe, and that women should have both privacy and bodily autonomy. The government does not belong in these decisions that should remain between women and our healthcare providers. I promise you that when I'm elected Attorney General, I will fight like hell. I will take the fight all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary to uphold the Arizona Constitution and your right to privacy over your own body. And when it comes to election integrity and securing and security, the following is what they have to say. As for Hamadeh, nothing was discussed on his website. And Mr. Hamadeh, if you're listening and you've got something to say, give us a ring today, really. I mean, if you want the information to go out to the voters before they hit the polls tomorrow, we would love to do a special bulletin for you. Now, as for May's quote on the website, our elections are administered by state and county officials of both parties, and those professionals are held to high standards. Under my watch, this will continue. I will protect our elections from those who try to overturn the results when they're simply not satisfied with the outcome, and ensure our election security and ethics are held to the highest standard. We must protect our democracy. I will also fight to protect vote by mail, end quote. So we hope that gives you enough information to at least get an idea of where they stand. You still have time, so jump online, make sure you kind of fact check, get a few sources, and get all your research done. So that way you can feel good. Your vote counts. Everyone's vote counts. Let's do what we need to do so we can feel like we voted for the one who's going to deliver our wishes and protect our rights. So keep all that in mind. Thank you for that. And we go back to you now, Tiff.
Thank you, Jai, for all of that great information. And now we're going to shift a little bit to other top offices candidates are vying for this Tuesday. First office is the state treasurer. Now their responsibilities are in Arizona. They are the chief banker and investment officer in the state treasurer. The state treasurer is elected during the midterms to the 4-year term, and the responsibilities of the treasurer include distribution and transfer of tax revenue funds, federal pass-through funds, and additional appropriations to state departments, municipalities, school districts, and organizations. The state treasurer also chairs the State Board of Investment that invests in the pertinent land trust funds, serves as Arizona's bank, tracks the receipt and disbursement of state funds. Now, the state treasurer assembles an annual report of the state's financial affairs, and things the Arizona state treasurer does not handle are tax liens, income tax, property tax, unclaimed property, and pension issues. Now let's go to Daniel, who's got the info for you.
All right, Tiff. Yes, we have the candidates, and they are Republican Kimberly Yee and Democrat Martin Quesada. Here's what they will bring to the office if elected. According to Yee's site, she will be, and I quote, advocating financial education, advancing a strong economy, and managing safe investments with ethical leadership. She has advanced law to require high school students to have 1 semester of financial education and personal money management before graduating from high school. During her time as a former Arizona legislator, Kimberly authored a law to require the Arizona academic education standards for K-12 education to include financial literacy at every grade level. She believes higher education and vocational training builds the foundation for a high-quality and skilled workforce. In just 23 short months, Kimberly has increased new education savings accounts by 21,737 under the AZ 529 Educational Savings Plan. And with Kimberly Yee's leadership, earnings distributed from the investment pools under her watch have reached $2 billion in just 3.5 years. Next up is Martin Quesada. According to his site, there are 3 areas of focus immediately. And I quote, education is the foundation of the success of our state. Martin is committed to prioritizing financial literacy efforts to ensure everyone has the resources to succeed and the opportunity to prosper. Next is investment in our future, our shared values of healthcare for all, a strong public education, affordable housing, and protecting our planet start responsible management and investment of our taxpayer dollars. Martin will ensure our investments reflect those values rather than serving special interests, and finally, transparency, to create an Arizona that works for all of us, every single one of us. Martin will bring ethics, professionalism, and transparency to the Treasurer's office to ensure the protection of our taxpayer dollars. Man, that was definitely a ton of info for you guys. You've been fantastic. Don't go away just yet. When we come back, we'll talk a few more offices and then move on to the propositions on the ballot. See you in a few.
Welcome back to the update on the HYFN TV network, where we are your next generation news, sports, and entertainment. And today we are focusing on the 2022 elections. Now, we've actually been talking about the candidates for quite some time now to make sure you could be given unbiased information. Now, if you missed any of it, remember you can always catch us on the on-demand on our website and Roku channel. So this next office is for U.S. House of Representatives, specifically for District 9, which in Arizona includes parts of Mesa, Tempe, and Scottsdale. The only candidate running is Paul Gosar, who represents the Republican Party. He is the incumbent, meaning he just served 2 prior years and is running unopposed for another 2. This office is similar to the Senate by acting in the best interest of their state. And to make sure we still provide you the info on how they will vote, which types of laws they will work on, here's where he stands on the topics important to voters currently. Regarding the border, quote, I support President Trump's border wall and have worked with the Trump administration to finally address the threats posed by our porous borders. And then when it comes to abortion, his site states, quote, I believe in the sanctity of life and have spent my career protecting the rights of the unborn. But being pro-life is about more than trying to end this tragic practice, he says, which is why I've also worked to reduce barriers to adoption and promote policies that support groups offering hope and assistance to mothers facing crisis pregnancies. And then when it comes to election security, he says there's not much on his site, but the same goes out to you. If there's something you'd like to say, contact us at hyfntv.com. Now for inflation and the economy, here's where he stands. By cutting red tape and regulations, lowering all taxes, and demanding fair trade policies, we can grow our economy and create better paying jobs. So all right, now that we've got those national offices done, let's talk about the Arizona state government offices. The topics we are going to cover to get their viewpoint on here are the border, abortion, and election integrity. Let's start off with the governor's office. Daniel has that for you.
Thank you, Tiff. So let's talk about the office for governor. What exactly does it do anyway? Well, the governor of Arizona is the leader of the state and heads the executive branch of the Arizona government. He or she is also the commander-in-chief of Arizona's National Guard. The governor's duties include informing the budgeting process, appointing state directors and justices, replacing vacated seats in the Senate, signing bills into law, or allowing bills to become law by not signing them and giving them 90 days. The governor also has the ability to veto a bill in order to block it from becoming legislation. The governor has the authority to sign executive orders and or call the legislature into special session for urgent action. Except for treason and cases of impeachment, the governor has the power to grant reprieves, commutation, and pardons after conviction. Needless to say, our governor has a massive role. Our candidates for governor are Republican Kari Lake and Democrat Katie Hobbs. And here's where they stand on the major issues. First up, the border. For Lake, she will call to the states. That's an interstate compact for border security, deter lawlessness by finishing Trump's wall, expanding the Arizona Rangers, enhance National Guard presences, modify HB 2810 to crack down on the cartels, That new law would allow law enforcement to seize property belonging to suspected or known criminals affiliated with the cartels and human trafficking rings under asset forfeiture. Also, she'll deport criminals, empower law enforcement to make trespassing arrests, creating a special border court, and grant removal authority for State Guard and the National Guard, and expand communication with the Mexican government. Meanwhile, Katie Hobbs, on her site, states, as governor, Katie will always communicate with local government officials, law enforcement, community centers, and healthcare providers to prioritize getting them what they need. The Hobbs administration will ensure there is more funding for our border communities. Katie will provide the Department of Public Safety, or DPS, assistance directly to sheriffs on the border, ensuring they have the necessary intelligence and resources to handle migrant crossings humanely and efficiently. As governor, I will issue the tools at my disposal to bring resources to our border communities and provide meaningful relief for Arizonans suffering the consequences of decades of federal inaction. End quote. Now, when it comes to abortion, here's where they stand. Lake says, and I quote, "I am pro-life and believe that every life, starting at conception, is worth saving. The pro-life movement stands strongly in support of providing the resources necessary for mothers to embrace life, as do I. As governor, I will put significant new resources into helping pregnant women choose life-saving options, including adoption, parental support and guidance, and neonatal treatment." End quote. And for Katie Hobbs, she says, and I quote, "As governor, Katie will use every tool at her disposal to restore the crucial reproductive rights we have been guaranteed for the last 50 years. As governor, Katie will proactively support and provide ongoing resources to reproductive health care providers as they administer critical services to Arizona's families. As governor, Katie's veto pen would be the last line of defense to stop restrictive and extreme bills in their tracks." End quote. Moving on to election integrity. Now, this one has been big here in Arizona. Eyes around the nation have been watching too. Lake says, and I quote, "Arizona's audit revealed numerous deficiencies and issues with our elections on a scope and scale sufficient to have challenged the outcome of 2020. First, gotta require voter ID on all ballots. Second, require pre-printed paper ballots. No printing ballots on site at polling stations. And third, take all equipment that uses software out of the counting process." End quote. Katie Hobbs says she will, and I quote, "expand access to voting in communities of color, automatically restore voting rights for Arizonans who have repaid their debt to society, enhance election security by allowing election officials to utilize the National Change of Address list to maintain more up-to-date election rolls, funding risk-limiting audits, and making nonpartisan post-election audits mandatory without regard to political party participation. Also, ensure that the security of election workers by providing additional resources for federal, state, and local law enforcement." She also says she'll expand access to the ballot for all and designate Election Day as a state holiday. End quote. Next up is the Secretary of State's office, and Jai has all that for you.
Thank you, Daniel. And yes, guys, let's talk now about the Secretary of State's office. Now, what are the responsibilities of the Secretary of State? Well, first and most importantly, well, very importantly, they are the next in line in succession should the governor leave office due to death, resignation, or impeachment. Secretary of State is the chief filing officer for Arizona. Secretary of State's office is also responsible for documenting business partnerships in Arizona, registering trade names, trademarks, and giving out certificates of registration. Additionally, the Secretary of State is chief election officer in the state and is tasked with certifying voting devices, election results, candidates, and ballot measures. The office also has the authority to commission notaries, certify notarized documents, and the office can permit the use of the Great Seal of the state of Arizona. So who are our lucky candidates? They are Mark Fincham, first of all, who represents the Republican Party, and Adrian Fontes, representing the Democratic Party. Now we're going to give you a brief description about why each is running for office and what makes them the person that they think they're the person for the job. Well, first up is Mark Fincham. According to Mark Fincham's website, he said, quote, Mark Fincham is running for Arizona's Secretary of State to restore honor, integrity, and security to the position. Mark understands that it's not up to the Secretary of State to make the law, but to enforce the law that's already laid down, which includes maintaining an election procedure manual that wholly reflects the laws passed by the Arizona legislature. Above all else, Mark's commitment to voters is simply to just follow the law, end quote. And why does Adrian believe he's the man for the job? Well, according to the website, quote, Adrian Fontes will stand up to the lies. He's committed to preserving integrity in our elections, increasing transparency in the Secretary of State's office, making voting easier for registered voters, and ensuring that Arizona's business community has a partner in the Secretary's office. Now, during these challenging times, Adrian Fontes is a steady bipartisan candidate with certifications, experience, and dedication to the Constitution that is needed to do the job as Arizona's Secretary of State, end quote. So you tell us, who do you think is the best for our governor's role and Secretary of State role? Now don't go anywhere. The Update's 2022 election.
That is right, folks. We're back, and we missed you just as much as you missed us. Now let's wrap up this election coverage show with what propositions are being voted on for the state. First up is Prop 128. Now this amendment would allow the legislature to make changes to or divert funds from an initiative or referendum if the measure is found to have illegal or unconstitutional language by the Arizona or Supreme Court with a majority vote. So currently, any changes of this nature would need a 3/4 vote. So if you vote yes, that is going to indicate and have the effect of amending the Constitution to allow the state legislature to amend, divert funds from, or supersede an initiative or referendum measure enacted by the people of Arizona if the measure is found to contain illegal or unconstitutional language. And a no vote shall have the effect of retaining existing law on the state's legislature's ability to amend or divert those funds or supersede an initiative or referendum measure. Next up is Prop 129. Now this one would limit an initiative to one subject per measure and would require the name of the subject to be included in the title of the initiative measure. A yes vote shall have the effect of amending the Constitution to limit the initiative measure and would require that the subject to be expressed in the title. And a no vote keeps the law effectively the way it is currently. And that brings us to the next proposition, number 130. This one's a bit lengthier, so bear with me for a minute. This amendment would combine 4 sections of the Constitution regarding property tax exemptions into one section. It would remove determinations that are currently in place that regulate the amount of certain property tax exemptions. It would also allow property tax exemptions for veterans with disabilities or widows or widowers, regardless of when they became a resident of Arizona. Voting yes shall have the effect of amending the Constitution to consolidate property tax exemptions into a single section, removing the constitutional determinations as to the amount of certain property tax exemptions, leaving the legislature to prescribe by law the qualifications for and amounts of property tax exemptions it creates, allowing property tax exemptions for resident veterans with disabilities, widows, and widowers, regardless of the time they became residents, and establishing that the person is eligible for property tax exemption under more than one category as a widower, person with a disability, or veteran with a disability. And a no vote shall have the effect of retaining the existing law on property tax exemptions. It's definitely a mouthful, but definitely important to know about. Jai has the next few for you.
Thanks, Tiff. So next up, guys, we have Prop 131. This amendment would create a position known as Executive Officer, who would be elected along with the governor and run on the same ticket. The executive officer would take over as governor if the current governor were to die, be removed from office, or be physically unable to continue the duties. Now, currently, the Secretary of State would take over as governor if the current governor were to need to be replaced for any of those above stated reasons. A yes vote on the ballot shall indicate and amend the Constitution to create the office of Lieutenant Governor beginning with the 2026 election. This would require that a nominee for governor's name and nominee for lieutenant governor be jointly elected. That's a game changer. This will replace the Secretary of State with the lieutenant governor as first in line to succeed the office of governor, and provide the Secretary of State, State Treasurer, and Attorney General and Superintendent of Public Instruction may succeed to the office of governor, regardless of whether they were elected. So we have a new line of succession being proposed here. A no vote shall indicate retaining the current executive branch and existing law on executive succession. Now moving on to Prop 132. This amendment would mean that moving forward any initiative or referendum to approve a tax would need a supermajority. That means a 60% vote to yes will make it a law. Now currently a new tax on the ballot only needs a simple majority to be approved. A yes vote shall have the effect of amending the Constitution to require at least 60% of the votes cast to approve an initiative or referendum that enacts a tax. A no vote shall, of course, retain existing law on initiative and referendum measures. Next up is Prop 209, which would reduce the maximum interest rates on medical debt from 10% all the way down to 3% annually. It would lower the amount of certain assets that are allowed to be seized during debt collection as well. It would even adjust exemptions for inflation starting in 2024. Additionally, the measure would allow courts to lower the amount of income that can be garnished as part of debt collection in cases of extreme economic hardship. A yes vote shall have the effect of reducing maximum interest rates on medical debt from 10 down to no more than 3% per year, shall increase exemptions for all medical debt from including certain personal assets such as a debtor's home. So that's, I'm sure, a huge sigh of relief if that goes through for many folks, especially the last couple of years facing many financial hardships. Shall also protect certain household items, motor vehicles, and bank accounts. So huge shifting there. Shall also adjust exemptions from all debt collection for inflation. This shall begin in 2024, which means this will decrease the amount of disposable earnings which are subject to garnishment, and that shall limit that to no more than 10% of disposable earnings, but shall allow a court to decrease the disposable earnings subject to garnishment to 5% based on extreme economic hardship. So huge shifting there for anyone with old debts. A no vote shall have the effect of retaining existing laws, of course, relating to debt collection. Moving on, folks, to Prop 211. This law would require any entity or person spending more than $50,000 on statewide political campaigns or $25,000 on other campaigns to disclose the original donor of any contributions over $5,000. It would also create additional reporting and enforcement provisions. It would not include personal monies or business income. And folks, a yes vote shall have the effect of requiring additional disclosures and reporting by entities and persons who campaign media spending and or in-kind contributions for campaign media spending that exceeds $50,000 for statewide campaigns or $25,000 in other campaigns, including identifying original donors of contributions anything more than $5,000 in aggregate. This creates penalties as well. This bill creates penalties for violations of the law and allowing the Citizens Clean Elections Commission to adopt rules and enforce the provisions of the law. A no vote shall have the effect of retaining existing law on campaign financing reporting requirements. Now let's go to Daniel. He's going to give us the final propositions here.
Thank you, Jai. And ladies and gentlemen, it is nearing the end of our show. Let's go on with the next proposition, number 308. This amendment would mean that Arizona students who graduated from and attended a public or private high school or had equal homeschooling for 2 years in Arizona would be eligible for financial aid at state universities and community colleges, as well as be eligible for in-state tuition regardless of their immigration status. Currently, students who are in Arizona without proper immigration status are not eligible for in-state tuition regardless of how long they have attended school locally. A yes vote shall have the effect of allowing any Arizona student, regardless of immigration status, to be eligible for in-state tuition at state universities and community colleges if they graduated from and spent at least 2 years attending an Arizona public or private high school or received homeschool equivalent, allowing any Arizona student, regardless of the status, to be eligible for state financial aid at state universities and community colleges. A no vote shall have the effect of retaining the current law on university and community college tuition. The next proposition is Prop 309, which would require voters to write their birthday, government ID number, and signature on a form that would go inside their sealed early ballot. It would also require photo ID to vote in person, requiring ADOT to provide a free, non-operating ID license to individuals who want or need it for voting purposes. A yes vote will have the effect of requiring the I cannot read that word, I'm sorry guys. It'll require you to have an early, in the early ballot to have the concealed registration with your name, identification. This is just to make sure the voting is done right. You'll have the state issued identification number, at least 4 digits of both of the Social Security. Also, you'll have certain photo identification issued by the state of Arizona or a tribal government or the United States government to receive a ballot at an in-person voting location. This will also remove the ability to receive a ballot at an in-person voting location without photo identification when showing 2 other identifying documents, and requiring the Arizona Department of Transportation to provide, without charge, a non-operating identification license to individuals who request one for the purpose of voting. A no vote shall have the effect of retaining existing law on early ballot for identification. And finally, we have the final proposition of the day, 310. This law would create a fire district safety fund. It would be funded by an increase of 0.1% to the state's sales tax and would stay in effect through the year 2042. Money from the fund would go toward rural fire districts for response times and equipment. Voting yes for this will have the effect of establishing a fire district safety fund, increasing the transaction privileges, the privileged sales and use tax by 0.1% from January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2042 to pay for the fund, and distributing monies from the fund to fire districts on a monthly basis. A no vote shall have the effect of retaining existing law on the tax rate excuse me, and funding for fire districts. So there you have it, students, parents, and all Arizonans. Get out to the polls this Tuesday. Do your part. Go vote. let's go choose the candidates that we need to lead our state and our nation towards a better future. Now that's all. Let's go back to Tiff.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for that information. And yes, do your part and go vote. Thank you so much for being here with us today on The Update. We are your 2022 election news leaders. Catch us later this week where we talk about who won and what that means now. Until next time, I'm Tiff.
I'm Daniel.
And I'm Jai. You guys have a great week. Have fun at the polls.
And just like that, we are back. Okay, so the next and final office we are going to highlight is the Superintendent of Public Instruction, because our youth are the future. It's massively important that they are able to receive a proper education. Now, superintendents of public instruction are limited to 2 consecutive terms, and his or her duties include enforcing the State Board of Education's policies, distributing state education funds to counties every year, issuing school materials and supplies, determining the course of study, administrative instruction, issue teacher certificates. They also audit schools, auditing school official accounts with the Auditor General. They prepare budgets for school transportation, and the superintendent also works with the State Board of Education to create and achieve standards for all Arizona public schools. The Office of Superintendent is a part of the executive branch for the state government, and that is a ton of responsibility. So let's see how they plan to tackle the job. Jai's got the information for you.
Thank you, Tiff. So the candidates that we have this time around are Republican, Tom Horn, and Democrat Kathy Hoffman. Now, according to their websites, their priorities and plans are as follows. According to Horn's website, his plan is to, quote, fight critical race theory, stop cancel culture, promote patriotism, quality education, and real learning. His focus will be on removing critical race theory, putting an end to ethnic studies, shifting bilingual education, keeping students in Arizona, and Arizona graduation requirements, as well as state takeover of failing schools and scholarships for high-achieving students. Looks like he's trying to kind of hit both sides of the gamut there. Now, meanwhile, his opponent, Hoffman's site states, she will focus on, quote, recruiting and retaining high-quality teachers, supporting the mental health of our students, bridging the digital divide, creating welcoming, diverse, and inclusive schools, expanding career and technical vocations, such as like vocational education programs, supporting our teachers and school staff, reducing classroom sizes, preparing our children for success, paid parental leave, and universal pre-K and full-day kindergarten. So if education is important to you, make sure you know who you're voting for, as their approaches are significantly different. Next up, we want to remind you about the other offices to vote for. First is the State Mine Inspector. Now, this is a position you probably don't think about super often, but the person running for the job is Paul Marsh. He's uncontested. The person for this position is responsible for the Arizona Mine Inspector, and they are tasked with inspecting mines across the state to provide safety to the mine workers and the public. The mine inspector is responsible for the inspection of mines that have 50 or more workers every 3 months, and all other mines on a yearly basis. The mine inspector's duties include inspecting conditions, of course, safety devices, equipment, machinery, operation, sanitation, that's great, ventilation, entrances and exits, report on accidents and death, hopefully that doesn't happen often, and the overall health and safety of the miners. Now, mine inspectors have the authority to suspend or close mining operations to ensure the proper safety measures are being applied and met. So good luck during your term, Paul. Then, of course, there is the corporation commissioner positions. We say it that way because there are two. Now, the candidates are Republicans Nicholas Myers and Kevin Thompson, and Democrats Sandra Kennedy, and Lauren Kuby. Now, the Corporation Commission is a semi-executive regulatory agency in the state government. They have 5 elected members that serve 4-year terms, but not more than 2 consecutive terms. The Corporation Commission approves rules and regulations that involve the state's public utility companies, and responsibilities include incorporating businesses and organizations, of course, regulating securities, and ensuring the safety of railroads and pipelines. So we have a few positions here. We've got multiple candidates, except for Paul Marsh, of course. Go ahead and get a little bit more research done today if you're interested in who ends up in those positions. As a native Arizonan, I believe that all of the positions are positions to be aware of, so that we never are surprised when a candidate votes a certain way, right? So let's go back to Tiff now for the rest.
You are so right, Jai, and thank you for all of that great information. And you guys, don't forget, there are also specific county elections, such as county attorney, clerk of the Superior Court, justice of the peace, and Supreme Court justices. I mean, seriously, the makeup of our government is no joke. And it's important to vote for every office. Like Jai was saying, they all are very important. For more information, make sure you check out the Secretary of State's website. It'll give you all the information you need to know about all candidates for all races, along with a ton of more information. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're finishing up the show with all the propositions being voted on for the state. See you soon.